Welcome to Rom Wills Money Matters. I've always made money during recessions. I wanted to share that, and it's, you know what, it's funny when you talk about recession, and there's talk in the air about recession. There's been talk in the air for a few years about recession, even with the change in administrations, talk about recession. Recession, people being laid off and everything. And I was thinking about it, this is just from, I can't speak for everybody else. I always made money during recessions. Like during the last Great Recession, actually the amount of money I made was actually increasing. During the last Great Recession, I was actually working retail, but I was getting plenty of overtime. And then even when they had some job cuts, I actually got a raise. Like the manager couldn't wait to talk with. It was just a formality. He had already decided he was going to raise my position up. I was like, okay. But then I thought about other recessions and I looked back and I was like, there was a recession during that period? There was a recession during that period? I was like, wait a minute. I always made money during any recession. And then remember in the last episode, I mentioned this guy I met when I was working on this retail job. This dude had money. And I never forget what he said, because I learned, look, just as an aside, you meet somebody who's actually making money, just have a conversation with them. Always have a conversation. I don't care if they making money, they show they making money, have a conversation. They don't need to be some degreed expert or something, because apparently they doing something right. But I never forget what he said. He said, man, somebody's always making money. You want to be that person who's always making money, because one of the things during any recession, that usually means major companies that are on the stock market aren't making the money that they should have. Usually stock market companies. But depending on what you're doing for a business, you can always make money. An example just popped in my head. I thought about this guy I encountered one time who was doing mobile detailing of cars. I mean, he had a van, had water in it, and he would go visit people. People still need their cars cleaned, and he don't have to charge that much. I don't know how much he was charging, 100, 200, whatever. But if you think about something, right? Say he had 5 people a day. 5 people a day who needed their stuff clean, right? And he may be charging 200. He could probably find 5 people who still making enough money to charge them 200, and he's still making 1,000 a day. Still making 1,000 a day. And he's making a whole lot a month. And he might work 6 days a week. 6 days a week. He might take a day off, right? So 6,000 every week, that's what, 24,000 a month. And that might be during a recession. And if you really look at it, he don't have like a lot of people either. But what he's doing is really getting the people who still have money, because even during a recession, there's still going to be people who have money. Indeed, I remember talking with my grandmother, may she rest in peace. She never had a negative. I remember like people would talk negative about the Great Depression. She thought she was rich during the Great Depression. I think I finally had a conversation with her, and it was only based on an assignment I had from a college class. Our teacher wanted us to talk to some elders. And I talked with both my grandmother and my step-grandfather. Neither one of them had any issues. Like, I thought about that. Like, when I was about to talk with her, I was like, she never complained, never said anything. She was like, well, thought she was rich. She was living in a nice townhouse. Her father was an AME minister. My great-grandfather, AME minister. I'm not even sure where my great-grandmother worked. But they had money. I'm going to tell you what. You got to think, even during recessions, somebody's making money. Now, of course, it's a recession. Somebody ain't making money. There's going to be a problem. And some people going to have problems. But you got to think in terms of what are you doing? Like people who are like serving food. in restaurants, they usually, depending on where they are, depending on what they're serving, depending on their customer base, they usually not complaining, especially if they don't charge that much for something. Like say you have a restaurant and you don't charge that much for the food. Like food at typical restaurants costs anywhere from $10 to $20. People going to eat no matter what. People are going to eat. Now, even unless your restaurant is right next to like some major building where they had to lay off some people, you might be all right. You might be just some neighborhood shop and people just still coming in there. Indeed, during recessions, many people in entertainment still making some money because people have to be entertained. It depends on what you're doing. Now, I was thinking about what I was doing. Now, one of the things that I made money during the last Great Recession, and they even got a raise, was I was just a good worker. I was just a good, hard worker. Look, here's the thing. I don't care what they call a recession, depression, whatever. There's still jobs that need to be done. There's still jobs, and everybody, and like I said, the recessions or depressions, they usually depended upon what major companies are doing. But everybody don't work for major companies. Sometimes you might have a small business, like I gave the example of somebody detailing. You can have a cleaning business. I talked last week about that. People always need stuff cleaned, It depends on where you are, where you living, what are you doing, who you working for, what your business is. If you have a business like people cutting grass, people still cutting grass. You could have a lawn business. People's grass still going to keep growing. And I'm going to tell you what, especially in businesses where they don't charge a lot of money and people feel like it's a necessity, they have to have it, you can still make money. Or businesses, whether you own the business, whether you work for the business as a job, you can still make it. Like when I see recessions and everything, I'm like, okay, whatever. When I see these layoffs now, y'all see what I do. So maybe I'm not the best example. Like everybody can't like do these videos. But what if you're doing something else? Think about and I'm gonna get more into different businesses and a really ideal that you should have when you get into business, period, in the next episode. But remember, you hear recession, you see that depending on where you at, depending on what you're doing, you don't need to panic. You don't need to panic at all. It really depends on where you at, how hard you work, whatever. Now, like when I was working at that retail, there was a major layoff. There was some people laid off and everything. But I was still there, working hard. Some businesses still need people. Yeah, they might cut people, but if you're a hard worker, you're an efficient worker, you can keep a job. Even in places that having layoffs. I guarantee all these places that's laying off people, they still got plenty of people working for them. Usually they'll lay off like something just unnecessary. Even some of these companies you hear, they're laying off 1,000 people, but then you find out they got 1 million working for them. It's like, okay. But you got to think in terms of yourself. Whenever you want a job, you got to make yourself as indispensable as possible. When you have a business, it has to be a business that people need, they still going to want no matter what, all right? So I want y'all to think about that. But yeah, that's how I usually, what I'm sharing is just personal knowledge of how I survive recessions. I was like, there was a recession? Wow. Even during the pandemic, I was still making money. You want to be in that position. So many people were still making money during that pandemic. All right. So anyway, I want y'all to think about that. And y'all know the deal. Let's go make that money.